Casey DeFreitas with IGN here to talk about Monster Hunter Rise. I know we learned a ton of information from the gameplay shown at Tokyo Game Show last week, but I was able to interview the producer Ryozo Tsujimoto and director Yasunori Ichinose, and let me tell you, I am hyped for this game, and I just learned quite a few things to back up this attitude, like skippable cutscenes, but I'll get back to that in a second. Here's some of the most important new information I just learned that I think you should be hyped for, but also some things that maybe you shouldn't be. So this is more of a big picture detail rather than a small thing specifically about Monster Hunter Rise, but I figured you should know that these naming conventions are the new normal. And that's because Tsujimoto-san said each new game is based around a specific theme or concept, and they decided that it would be better to give new Monster Hunters a title that reflects that. They also thought it'd be easier for players to understand what a game is about before even playing it. If you played Monster Hunter World, you're familiar with one set of key quests that you can play either solo or multiplayer. But in previous Monster Hunters, those different sets of quests were separated into the Gathering Hub for multiplayer and Village quests for single player. Monster Hunter Rise brings back that classic separation of quests, but don't worry, single player progression won't affect your ability to play multiplayer quests and vice versa. But that's not the only classic thing that is returning with Monster Hunter Rise. Cutscenes will no longer prevent you from joining multiplayer quests with friends like they did in World. This was my biggest criticism of that game, so I am very glad that that is being removed. So in Rise, this even takes it a step forward where you can even skip cutscenes in both multiplayer and single player quests, but you'll always be able to go back and rewatch them in classic Monster Hunter fashion. In Monster Hunter Rise, you can climb and explore freely. Sound familiar? Well, I'm sure Ichinose-san and Tsujimoto-san has heard this a lot because they burst out laughing when I asked them if Rise was inspired at all by The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. But on the contrary, the team has wanted to create a Monster Hunter with a lot more freedom of movement since Generations, which came out in 2015. In both of the new trailers and the TGS gameplay, we got to see a lot of flashy new attacks made possible by consuming the wire bug gauge. These attacks reminded me of Generations Hunter Arts. However, Ichinose-san explained while Hunter Arts were mostly used as like a sort of special moment that could only be used occasionally because of long cooldowns, the wire bug attacks, on the other hand, are something they actively want players to use during combat in between attacks to make new combos. Also, unlike Hunter Arts, these wire bug special attacks cannot be customizable. However, and here comes the interesting part, there are other new elements regarding actions that they can't just talk about quite yet, and they said to please look forward to that. Oh, and one more detail, there will not be any armor skills that affect the wire bug. Just something to know. Now, I have to admit, I didn't actually notice this myself, but I did notice a lot of you and a lot of fans talking about this online. And the director and the producer were also pretty surprised that so many people noticed. Yeah, I'm talking about the change of the icon for the antidote. In previous Monster Hunter games, the antidote looked just like the potion, but it was blue. But in Monster Hunter Rise, this changed, and that's because they are making alterations to icons to suit the smaller screen of the Nintendo Switch. So they've been looking over existing icons and fixing them to suit the Switch as necessary, like the Bogon ammo and some other things. And speaking of adapting for the Nintendo Switch, this is unhyped news, but like most Nintendo Switch games, Monster Hunter Rise will not have built-in voice chat. It also will not be compatible with the voice chat app in the Nintendo Switch mobile app. I'm pretty disappointed about this, but it's pretty par the course for Nintendo Switch games, as I mentioned, so I don't really know what else I expected. Instead, you can still type in messages and use pre-built messages and stickers and gestures to communicate with your fellow hunters in hunts, so good luck. We could do it. Or use Discord. And we are already at the end for the last thing to probably not be hyped about. And this is the fact that the Prowler mode, the mode of play in Generations that allowed you to play as your palicos and felines, is not a feature in Monster Hunter Rise. But hey, at least you can play with your palico friends and your doggo friends, the Palamutes, so yeah, go pet the dog. Of course, we learned a ton more than all of that during the Tokyo Game Show gameplay demos, like how you won't need paintballs or scoutflies to track monsters on the new maps in Monster Hunter Rise. And to see those videos and a whole lot more, you're already here on IGN.